is smooth.
So this, yes, this panel, the status of the different systems which are all involved in the synchronized sequence, and for which they have to be ready at the same time, the same moment, to allow the launch.
And these include the launch base, the launcher, the satellites, in this case the ATV, Jules Verne. Basically all the systems across this very big space base, Europe's spaceport, all these systems summarized by the green status panels coming into Jupiter here, which is why we call Jupiter the nerve center of the whole thing. The DDO, Thierry Vallée, again, you'll hear him call out the 1 minute mark in just a moment, and we'll be into the final 60 seconds.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
Are you going to go out and see the show?
I go and see the show.
Alex is going to step outside.
Top H0 moins 1 minute.
See you later. Alex is going out to the terrace. There are 2 terraces on either side of us here. The folks, the invited guests, are going out now. And he's going to watch the launch and come back, and he'll give us his impressions live. In the meantime, keep your eyes open for the final ignition sequence. You'll hear the DDO call out 3, 2, 1 ignition. And you'll see the main engine light up. And then count to 7, because during those 7 seconds, the computers that we've been talking about will be checking out pressure and temperature. And if they find everything all right, then they'll give the order to light the boosters. Those are the ones on the side there. And then we'll be off. So we'll let the DDO call out the final 10 seconds, and we'll let you enjoy the liftoff. And we'll be back with you after Ariane has cleared the tower.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain, allumage des EAP et décollage.
Night sky over Kourou here, always an impressive sight. 775 tons lifting off. The DDO is saying that everything is okay on board. Alex has just come rushing in. You look very pleased of what you've seen. How was it out there?
That was absolutely terrific. It was a marvelous show. The light and sound were absolutely impressive.
What impressed you most?
I think the sound, but it comes a little bit later, but the sound is really impressive.
It's not the first time you've seen a launch.
No, it's not the first time, but each time it's a little bit like the first time.
All right, sounds exciting. I'll go out next time.
So we are now in flight. So from now on, we shall leave the green panel and follow the launcher's health status on this little graphic that you can see
on the upper left
on the screen.
Now, what is that? That's the real trajectory and the optimum.
Yes, the curve represents a computed simulation of the whole trajectory. And the white spot on the curve represents the actual position of the launcher, which permanently sends a telemetry signal to the radars of the ground stations.
And on the bottom left, A and V on the bottom is altitude and...
Other indication of the velocity and altitude are real-time data. And also the angle between the launcher's antenna and the ground stations.
All right, we are into the first powered flight phase, which is the 2 boosters and the main engine. And you saw the lights before we lost Ariane to the cloud cover. The boosters will be burning for another 20 seconds or so.
The Vulcan engine will operate for about 8 minutes before it's shut down. And at this point, at an altitude of around 145 kilometers, the main stage will separate and follow a side ballistic trajectory before re-entering the atmosphere and fall down into the ocean.
Séparation des étages d'accélération à poudre.
There is the separation of the 2 solid boosters. This is what it looks like up there. The camera's not on board tonight. This is a camera shots from a flight last year, but you can see one of the boosters, both of them, one on the other side, dropping into the ocean, and then what happens?
Yeah, they are approximately 450 kilometers off the launch site of the coast of Kourou.
We're now into the second flight phase, the EPC, or the core stage. The core cryogenic stage is burning alone. It'll burn, as Alex said, for just under 10 minutes. Pushing Ariane again across the Atlantic.
Well, a short time before the fairing separation.
Fairing separation will be next up. You'll hear the DDO call out that milestone. And the separation of the booster and the fairing, all done by more or less the same systems, am I right, as pyrotechnic cords?
Absolutely, all the same systems, like the ones we used on Ariane-4.
Largage de la coiffe.
There the DDO has called out the separation of the fairing, and you'll get a shot of that.
We're on time.
Coming
And
up.
now
There's just one half of, actually there's two halves that are blown away into the fairing, and they also fall into the Atlantic. How much weight have we lost there?
We've lost about 2.5 tons, and the launcher has now lost approximately 70% of its total weight.
Remember, 775 tons at liftoff, and then we lose all the fuel in the boosters, and the fuel rapidly being burnt up in the core stage. You saw the launch site manager, Mr. Sikar, a moment ago. You can hear from him now on the launcher campaign. Take a look. The launch campaign for this flight, Flight 181, began at the end of last year and lasted throughout January. First, we integrated the two solid boosters and the main cryogenic stage. On this version, these stages are identical to those on an Ariane-5 ECA. In other words, with a Vulcan 2 engine on the cryogenic stage. The storable propellant upper stage was then mated, and it is on this stage and on the vehicle equipment bay that there are a number of specific adaptations. The vehicle equipment bay structure has been reinforced to cope with the mass of the ATV. Following integration, the launcher was transferred to the final assembly building. 2 days later, we began the combined operations plan for the two-phase ATV to launcher mating. The first phase concerned what we call the SDC, which is the launcher interface cylinder. And during the second phase, the ATV was integrated onto the mechanical interface.
Tous les soirs à 17h, nous avons une réunion d'avancement concernant les différentes opérations qui ont été effectuées durant cette journée. L'ensemble de l'équipe opérationnelle se réunit.
We hold status meetings at 5 p.m. every evening here in this room, where the entire team reviews the different operations that have been carried out that day and those scheduled for the next day.
Après différents contrôles,
following a number of checks, the fairing was integrated onto the ATV. Upon completion of the final preparations, we hold what we call the Launch Readiness Review. This is an important meeting at which authorization is given for the launcher to be rolled out to the launch zone. The different industries, the design authority, the technical authority, and the operational teams all attend this meeting, together with the Ariane Technical Committee. It is this Ariane Technical Committee that gives the green light for the launch vehicle to be rolled out to the launch zone.
Nous pouvons transférer le lanceur en zone de lancement.
On the launcher side, everything's fine. We have a good altitude and good velocity.
2 minutes left in the core stage, the EPC burn, extinction of the lower stage, due to come at about 8 minutes, exactly 8 minutes and 55 seconds. We're going to hear now from Philippe Roland. You can see him in the blue shirt there, the Ariane Space Mission Director on the ATV campaign.
Le satellite ATV est arrivé
The ATV spacecraft arrived in French Guiana in late July on board the Ariane spaceship.
Ce satellite est arrivé en
Its three separate parts had to be assembled gradually over the first 5 months of the campaign, from August to November. The spacecraft comprises the solar panels, shipped separately, the upper part of cargo, which after preparation will carry all the supplies for the ISS, and the lower part, which contains most of the propellant needed to reach the station. The ATV will modify the position of the ISS by roughly 80 kilometers, thus giving it around 3 years of autonomy.
Au mois de décembre, entre
Between
même Noël et
Christmas
Nouvel An,
and the New Year, we began the ATV fueling operations, which lasted until late January. Final preparation started in mid-February. The thermal protection was installed and the satellite then transferred to the BAF, where it was mated onto the launcher and the fairing put in place. The flight will be relatively long, lasting more than 60 minutes before separation, and the launcher's behavior will be tracked by a network of stations. I would like to thank all of the international teams for their work on the ATV program over 7 months. It is thanks to them that Europe's spaceport will henceforth be seen as the departure point for the International Space Station.
A-OK on board. We're right where we should be. You saw during that film that we had acquisition of the ship downrange tracking station. Now we have a different trajectory tonight than we have for our normal standard GTO missions.
Yes, for a GTO mission we must get as close as possible to the equator plane, which usually means an orbit of 6 degrees or less inclination. Tonight we shall release the ATV.
The DDO has just called out the extinction of the lower stage, the separation of the lower stage, and we should be hearing him call out the ignition of the upper stage. And there it is. We've ignited the upper stage. Those 3 commands given by the onboard computer that's flying on the composite still with the ATV in about 12 seconds each. There's the lower stage being dropped back into the Atlantic.
Coming back to the orbits, we have an inclined 52 degrees orbit for the ATV. And from Kourou, we can perform launches to reach orbits with inclination from around 90 degrees for heliosynchronous orbits, then to 62 degrees for GTO orbits. As you can see, Kourou offers a wide variety of orbits and missions, including escape missions for interplanetary journeys, like we did for Rosetta.
We're into the upper stage burn now. Before we start focusing on the ATV in the second half of the mission, we just want to take a look at the role of tonight's version of the upper stage, the ES.
So the EPS, that was a perfect ignition of the upper stage for a first burn of approximately 8 minutes. This stage is made in Bremen by our German partners of ELS Astrium. Greetings to them. We might say that the EPS today has 2 missions. One, to provide necessary velocity to deliver the ATV on the proper orbit before separation. But secondly, to realize an atmospheric re-entry in order to free the low orbit region above the Earth, avoiding to remain as a particularly dangerous debris for other launchers or manned vehicles flying to the station.
The speed, as you can see, 7 kilometers per second on the lower left of your screen. The speed we need to separate the ATV is a little over 8.
Little over 8. We will not still there, but we are right on track. We are right on the prediction of the trajectory.
So keep your eyes on the speed there, and when you see 8 kilometers, you know we're approaching separation. We can start focusing on the ATV now, a series of films coming up. Here's the first from the European Space Agency on the ATV's role as a cargo ship.
In the years to come, the ATV will become one of the principal vehicles servicing the International Space Station with unprecedented capacities and capabilities. At over 19 tons, the heaviest payload ever placed under an Ariane fairing, the space truck is 10.3 meters long, with a diameter of 4.5 meters. That's about the size of a London double-decker bus. The launch campaign saw the final assembly of this spacecraft's 2 main parts, the service module with the avionics and propulsion systems, and the pressurized cargo carrier with its docking port. Provided by Thales Alenia Space in Italy, the pressurized section offers 22 cubic meters, about half the volume of ESA's Columbus laboratory. It carries up to 8 standard-size racks which can contain, in closed bags, a variety of supplies and instruments. 180 kilos of European cargo was first packed in Italy before the ATV was conveyed to Kourou. There, before the remaining cargo was loaded, the entire pressurized section was disinfected as a sanitary precaution. Supplies, some 1,200 kilos, mainly from NASA, were then stored on board, including 500 kilos of food, 80 of clothing and spare parts. The vehicle also carries several tanks which store drinkable water, oxygen and nitrogen and fuel for the propulsion systems of the space station. The ATV can deliver water in compliance with NASA or Russian norms. For this first mission, 280 liters of drinking water from Turin, treated according to Russian standards. After further sanitary inspections, the hatch was closed, the ATV was purged and filled with pure synthesized air. Fueling the ATV under stringent safety conditions will have taken more than a month. It carries more propellants, over 6 tons, than the largest commercial satellites. Russian fuel and oxidizer were first pumped into 2 large reservoirs to be transferred to the space station through pipes in the docking mechanism. The largest quantity of propellant, however, was placed in the tanks of the service module, 3.5 tons for the ATV's own propulsion system, and when docked, to control the station's attitude and orbit. Because the ATV is also the most powerful space tug ever built, its 4 main engines and 24 small thrusters will be used to change the orbit of the complex for eventual maneuvers to avoid space debris and to periodically raise the orbit, countering the effects of atmospheric drag. When considering the bottom line of the manifest, dry and liquid cargo, propellants, supplies and equipment, the ATV will in fact be transporting 3 times more than Russian Progress vehicles, which to date have been servicing the ISS. Remaining attached to the space station for up to 6 months, the spacecraft's cargo section will be an integral part of the orbital outpost. Astronauts will be able to access it without spacesuits, to unload supplies, to store others, to place waste material to be discarded, and even to use it as rest quarters. Resupply, reboost, and an ultimate function, a fiery furnace for space refuse. After undocking, the vehicle will be targeted for controlled, destructive re-entry over the Pacific Ocean. The ATV's first mission unites past, present and future. It carries manuscripts by the French visionary novelist Jules Verne, and amongst the gifts for the ISS crew is a luxury 19th century edition of his work, From the Earth to the Moon.
From the Earth to the Moon and from the Earth to the International Space Station in the Ariane-5 ES version. Now, the ES version went through a series of upgrades for tonight's launch.
Since first launch in 1996, the Ariane-5 has evolved from the GERS generic version to ECA version, cryogenic version, which is today the standard configuration like Ariane 4 was. The ES version has been specially developed for the ATV mission. The core stage and the booster are absolutely identical to the Ariane-5 ECA version, and the upper stage EPS is the same that equipped the generic version. The reignition capability of the EPS was, of course, the reason for this choice.
So we can say that we combined some of the proven elements from the earlier
We combined very well proven elements, absolutely, to build up this version of ES.
Like the main cryogenic stage, which remained the same for the ES version. There was some new flight software that had to be defined for this longer mission tonight.
Yes, and some reinforcements of the upper structures in order to cope with the very heavy weight of the payload.
Right, the carbon fiber in the vehicle equipment bay, which we keep talking about because that's where the computers are located, that had to be strengthened. Also, the attitude control system had to be adapted for the longer flight tonight.
Yes, we have on board 6 tanks of 37 kilograms of hydrazine for the attitude control system, whereas we usually have 3 or 4 tanks for GTO missions.
Now, these upgrades, I assume, were coming out of the benefits of all the archives. Ariane-5 been flying for about 10 years now, so there's a lot of material that you could use from. We just had the DDO calling out extinction of the upper stage, so we're at the end of our first phase of the mission into now what we call the coasting phase, the ballistic phase.
The ballistic phase has started. upon the shutdown of the EPS.
And that should be going for about 45 minutes.
This will be this will be going for 45 minutes before the second ignition of the EPS.
That's some of the new things going on for the flight tonight. We're going to go